The hull cracked again, and this time the sound was not distant. It was right above my head. I pressed my hand against the cold metal wall of the ship and felt it shiver like something alive and afraid. Around me, 40 of my people sat in silence, waiting for the next impact, waiting to find out if this breath would be our last. My name is Vexthal Karune, and I am not from your world. I am Drenic. We were once a peaceful people, spread across 3 moons, known for our gardens of light and our songs that could calm a storm. Then the coalition of vested systems came to us and asked for weapons we did not want to build. When we refused, they did not argue. They simply erased us from the map of who belonged. They called it banishment. They said it kindly, as if kindness could soften the cruelty of it. Our homeworld was sealed behind a wall of warships. Every ship that carried our people out was given one rule: never return. No civilized world will take you in. I did not understand yet how true that second part was. I found out slowly, watching ship after ship turn away from us like we were smoke drifting past a closed window. We tried 11 worlds before ours started dying around us. 11 worlds with open ports and busy skies, and 11 worlds that saw the mark on our hull, the mark that meant exiled, and simply closed their doors. On the 9th world, they did not even send a message. They sent warning shots instead, close enough to make our engines stutter and our children cry. By the time our ship reached the outer dark near a small yellow star, we were not looking for a home anymore. We were looking for a place to stop being afraid, even for 1 hour. Our systems were failing. Our life support had maybe 6 hours left. My co-pilot, a quiet woman named Uressa, turned to me with eyes that had already given up. "There is one more signal," she said. "A young system, unranked. They call it Earth." Unranked meant nothing to us. It meant a place too small or too new for the coalition to bother listing properly. It also meant a place with no obligation to help us, and no reason to risk anything for strangers falling out of the sky. I sent the distress call anyway, because there was nothing left to lose. I used broken coalition standard, the only shared language I had, and I said the only honest thing I could say: we are dying. We have nowhere else to go. I expected silence. Silence was what the galaxy had taught me to expect. Instead, within minutes, a voice answered. A human voice, calm and clear, speaking words our translators struggled to catch at first. Then it came through. "Copy that, distressed vessel. Sending coordinates. Hang on, we are coming to you." I remember laughing, not from joy, but from disbelief. Uressa gripped my arm so hard it left a mark. None of us dared to hope, because hope, for us, had become something dangerous. We followed the coordinates down through clouds we had never seen before, thick and white and endless. Our ship hit the ground harder than I wanted, skidding across an open field, throwing dust into a sky that was a color I did not have a word for yet: blue. I expected soldiers. I expected chains, or cages, or the same cold rejection we had already learned by heart. What I found instead were people running toward us before the smoke had even cleared, carrying blankets and water, and shouting instructions to each other that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with helping. A woman reached our ship first. She had dark curls pulled back messily, dirt on her boots, and no weapon in her hands. She did not wait for permission or protocol. She simply reached up and pulled open our damaged hatch with her bare hands, coughing through the smoke, and looked straight at me. "Anyone hurt in here?" she asked, like it was the only question that mattered. Her name was Marin. I would learn later that she was not a soldier or a diplomat. She was a nurse from a small town, someone who had heard the emergency broadcast on her radio and driven for 2 hours without waiting for anyone's approval. That was my first lesson about humans. You did not wait to be told to care. You simply did. The days after we landed were a blur of confusion and quiet astonishment. Doctors came to check our injuries, using instruments they had clearly built in a hurry, working with a species they had never studied, and technology they did not understand. Families from the nearby town brought food they thought we might be able to eat, apologizing when we could not, and trying again with something new. I watched human leaders argue on screens set up near our camp, voices raised, opinions clashing, nothing agreed upon smoothly. I thought at first this was chaos, that we had landed among a species too divided to protect us. Marin caught me watching one of those arguments and laughed, not unkindly. "We argue about everything," she said. "It does not mean we will not help you. It just means we will be loud about how." She was right. Within a week, actions to shelter us moved forward even while the arguments continued. Land was found. Supplies were gathered. Children among my people were given warm clothes stitched by hands that had never seen a Drenic body before, yet still tried to make something that fit. I asked Marin once why her people bothered, when the rest of the galaxy had made it so clear that we were not worth the risk. She looked at me for a long moment before answering. "Because somebody has to be the ones who do not turn away," she said. "We know what it feels like to be the ones nobody wanted to help." I did not fully understand what she meant until later, when I learned pieces of human history, of wars and division, and slow, hard-won kindness that had to be chosen again and again, never given freely by nature alone. Humanity was not perfect, but their imperfection came with something the Coalition never had: a choice to try, made new every single day. 3 months after we landed, the peace we had found was tested. A Coalition envoy arrived in orbit, sleek and confident, broadcasting a message to every human government at once. Their tone was polite, almost gentle, the way people speak when they expect to be obeyed without resistance. They reminded Earth of galactic law. Exiled species were to be left alone, cut off from aid, allowed to fade quietly, so that no one else would be tempted to defy the Coalition's judgment. I stood in a crowded room with human officials when that message played. I braced myself for fear. I braced myself for apology, for the doors that had opened to begin closing again, the way every other world's doors had closed before. Instead, the room went still with something else entirely: anger. A tall man near the front, someone I later learned was one of Earth's senior representatives, stepped forward and answered the envoy directly, his voice steady but sharp enough to cut through the static of the transmission. "We did not ask your permission to help people in need," he said. "We are not going to start asking now." The envoy's response was cold, a warning wrapped in careful diplomatic language, hinting at consequences for a world too small to understand what it was risking. Earth's answer came back united, despite everything that usually divided them, nations that argued daily on nearly every subject finding, for once, complete agreement. No treaty was signed to make it official. No vote was needed. It was simply understood, spoken plainly through every channel humanity had. We do not abandon people who are drowning, just because someone tells us the water is not ours to touch. The envoy left without further argument, and no consequence ever came. I think, now, that the Coalition had grown too used to worlds bowing quickly, and did not know what to do with one that simply refused to be moved. I will not pretend everything after that was easy. Trust between two very different species takes patience, and mistakes were made on both sides as we learned how to share a world that had never been built with us in mind. But little by little, something new began to grow. Drenic children learned to run through human playgrounds, laughing in 2 languages at once. Human scientists and Drenic healers began trading knowledge, each amazed by what the other had built alone. Marin, who had once pulled open my ship's hatch with her bare hands, became someone I now call my closest friend, someone who taught me that kindness does not need a reason beyond itself. I remember standing beside her one evening, almost a year after we landed, watching the sun sink behind a line of hills the color of warm copper. Drenic children played in the grass below us, chasing human children who could not stop laughing, none of them caring in the slightest what species stood beside them. I turned to Marin and asked the question that had followed me since the day our ship first fell from the sky. Why did your people take a risk the rest of the galaxy would not? She thought about it for a long moment, watching the children below, before she answered. Maybe because we know what it is like to need someone to say yes, when everyone else has already said no. I did not have an answer worthy enough to give back. I simply stood there, watching the sky my people had once feared, now painted gently gold above a world that had chosen, without hesitation, without asking what it would gain, to call us something the galaxy never had: neighbors.